Wow, I cannot believe we are at week 4 of this March Marriage Madness experience.
It has been like an intense training camp, spring training camp, for all of us to be building a championship marriage as, of course, we are working our way through the top 10 greatest marriage plays.
But let's review so that you can write down anything that maybe you missed, and you can turn to the first page and maybe the flap of your book. Make sure you get all the 10 greatest plays. We're going to give you a review of the first 7. And the first 7, starting with number 10.
Number 10, choose your team. It does not happen automatically just because you went to a wedding and you had vows and you live in the same house. You need to resign your other job. You need to switch jerseys and choose your team.
And number 9 was pursue your player. Pursue with your eyes. Give them attention. Pursue with your words and pursue with your actions.
Yeah, the next one, number 8, was a little bit of a weird phrase, bring your brick, but the idea was that a marriage is not built on just these one monumental moments a year, but rather the 31 million little intentional, practical ways, the words, the actions that you build up your spouse with. And then we began building a very simple formula, STP, and the S stood for selfless.
And number 7 fell under that S, and it was play with grace. Drop the stones of criticism, of sarcasm, of condemnation, and say, you matter more to me than your mistake. And
that goes on to under the selfless as well. Number 6, use your words. You speak 112,000 words a week. Are they targeted? Are they intentional? Are you using words? We even gave you words to say. I am so proud of you. I believe in you. I think you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. I see how hard you're working. And these are really powerful phrases.
And then last week we moved on to the second letter in the formula, the letter T, which stands for truthful. And the first play under the T was play number 5, escape the rut. Tell the truth about where your marriage is at. What rut might you be in? And then own it and plan an escape and figure out how the two of you are going to get out of that rut.
Yeah, number 4 was play in the open. And we said, hey, it is human instinct to try and hide, and we need to start playing in the open. And we said that trust is built. It's actually a door that swings on the twin hinges of vulnerability and transparency.
Which brings us to the final letter in the little formula and the final 3 greatest plays for marriage. And the S stands for selfless, the T stands for truthful, and the P stands for passionate.
Love this one. The P stands for passionate. We're going to talk all about that tonight.
Now, as you hear the word passionate, you might be thinking, the thrilling, fiery emotion, or the romantic connection, or even the sexual energy. But that's passion that we're going to talk about is bigger than a romantic connection. It's even bigger than just sex.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about the first play under the P, and it's this. It is number 3, create adventure. Create adventure.
Okay, that sounds a little bit like number 5, escape the rut.
Well, they are related, so I want you to see them as 2 sides of the same coin. The escape the rut part is saying, you know what, let's be honest about the fact that we're in a rut. Let's determine that we're going to get out of this rut. But then what do you do when you get out? And that's what this play is all about. How do you actually create the adventure? What does that adventure look like?
That's right. This play finds the 2 of you standing outside of that rut asking, what do we do now? And the answer is, go create some adventure. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we made this bold declaration. We said if Jesus lived by a formula, we're pretty sure it would be the STP formula, because Jesus was selfless, and Jesus was truthful, and Jesus was passionate. Now, when you hear that Jesus was passionate, you might think, really? I see him more like he's very calm. He just guides people gently. He's not all that excitable. And that would be right, but again, we need the right definition of passionate. First, we see Jesus' passion coming out in the many high-intensity moments that he created. He didn't just say to his disciples, listen to my lecture, or let's just have a Bible study right now. Let's just go dive into the scriptures. He didn't just do that. He said, hey guys, come along with me. And then in a span of 3 years, they went on 8 major road trips and almost 40 smaller road trips, crisscrossing Israel, hiking together about 5,000 kilometers. They visited new places, they met new people, they walked, they talked, they set up camp around a fire, they cooked and ate, they talked about the future, and they slept under the stars. They made memories together, and these adventures connected their souls together.
So let's take a moment to define what an adventure is in the context of marriage. An adventure is anything you do together that breaks routine and builds connection. Now, Carolyn and I gave you an example of what it looked like for us to escape a rut by talking about sailing school and about buying a boat with a great big hole in it. And I just wouldn't want you for a second to think that these adventures mean you need to have lots of money, or that you need to take time off work, or that you need to be agile and athletic, because the fact is, you don't have to. That adventure that we talked about was actually a level 4 adventure, and we need to start talking about level 1, 2, and 3 before we get to the level 4.
So here's level 1, micro adventures. These would be daily, tiny little adventures, so tiny that you probably never even think of them as adventures. They're small, often spontaneous, little capers that are aimed at keeping life fresh and breaking routine and sending a minute shockwave into the ordinary parts of your life.
I do this all the time, and it drives you nuts, but I like to drive routes. If we're going someplace, we're going to Polo Park, I like to take a route we've never taken before. It's inefficient.
And it drives me crazy.
And it takes longer, and Carolyn's always like, why are we taking this route? You know what? It just sparks things up. It just livens things up. You might want to, instead of going to the same drive-through that you always go to, maybe stop and actually go into a coffee shop you've never been to before. Instead of saying the same thing, bye, love you, maybe come up with a new phrase like, go have a great day, then come home and tell me everything that happened. Drop off a treat at your spouse's work. If you have kids, this will freak them out. Sit in a different seat at dinner. I mean, they're just gonna, what are you doing? You can't do that. That's not your seat. Just mess things up a little bit. Leave a note with words strung together that you've never used before. Look, the fact is these little mini adventures, these little tiny adventures, they're so small, but there's hundreds and hundreds of them sitting right underneath your nose. You just need to learn to see them.
So those were micro adventures happening daily. And now level number 2, mini adventures for weekly or monthly times together. Now, if micro adventures were mostly spontaneous and that they can happen daily, the mini adventures are planned. They take a bit of effort. And these would probably be more weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And most of us would recognize them as a date. So let's think about it for a moment. Why do we call them dates?
I bet we've never thought about that. Why do we call them dates? I mean, that's a great question. The reason we call them dates is because we're saying, you know what? Our marriage, our relationship is not going to survive on leftovers. We are actually going to give it its own time slot.
That's right. A date is a point in time that you actually put on the calendar. A little flag in the calendar that says, us matters. Us matters. And it's a great way to pursue your spouse. We talked about that in week 1. Pursue your spouse by initiating and asking them out on dates.
Yeah, no, unless your marriage was arranged, chances are you actually started, your relationship probably started by dating. But what happens along the way is we forget to date, and what most couples don't really realize is that their relationship will stay alive and it will stay vital and keep growing because you never stop dating. So what does that look like? Well, sometimes we drive to a neighborhood or an area of town we're not used to, and we go, for a walk in that neighborhood. It's just fresh. We take a drive on a Saturday morning and grab a coffee and a conversation without really an agenda or going somewhere. Go to a farmer's market, rent a bike, go snowshoeing, take a water taxi, have a picnic, ask your spouse out for dinner to a restaurant that neither of you have ever been to.
Todd did this a little while ago. He asked me to go out on a date, and the first place we went was to the gym, which was actually novel in itself. We don't typically do that together. But we went to the gym, and then he wouldn't tell me where we were going. In fact, he didn't really know exactly where it was. And we went out for dinner to this little hole-in-the-wall Italian Asian fusion place, and we felt like we were in a different city. It was a different decor than we were used to, different meal, different music playing in the background. The whole thing felt so different, and all of a sudden, it was like we stepped out of the ordinary and we were creating a special memory.
Yeah. So when we talk about creating adventures, we want you to think, first of all, in terms of the micro adventures, level 1. They can happen daily. The mini adventures, also known as dates, they should be happening maybe weekly or at least once a month for sure. And then there are the level 3 milestone adventures. Now, a milestone adventure, we would say this is probably more yearly. This might be on a birthday or an anniversary or maybe just a moment. If you aren't used to going to the Jets or the Bombers or to Cirque du Soleil, maybe that would qualify as a milestone adventure. Maybe borrow a friend's canoe and go out for a weekend canoeing. Create a scavenger hunt for your spouse, so go have some fun together. Rent a cabin or borrow a tent for a weekend of getting away. Or maybe go to a hotel in the city, but pretend for 24 hours that you're actually tourists to Winnipeg and go see things and museums and different sites that you're not used to. These may take on a special celebration, like I said, a birthday or an anniversary, or they might just be to shake up the ordinary. In fact, we used to have a name for these. We used to call them what the heck it days. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. They were days when we felt like we just had too much to do and we were just going to escape the pressures and just say, okay, it's just you and I. What the heck?
What the heck?
Let's just go. And even if it seems illogical because of what we have on our to-do list, or it seems a little reckless with the time, we're going to go. Yeah. And we're just going to make this time for us. We're going to make a memory and a reminder to both of us that us matters. We've got to invest in this. So whether it's planned months in advance or whether it's spontaneous, we hope you are seeing that creating adventure matters. Whether it's regularly with micro adventures or weekly or monthly with mini adventures, or maybe the milestone adventures. But then we get now to that level 4, which are monumental adventures. And this is where the bucket list comes in.
Yeah, so we started a bucket list back in 2021. Of course, a bucket list is things we want to do before we kick the bucket, a little morbid. But I remember when we sat down, you wanted to go on a royal tour of London, and I wasn't so thrilled, but I wrote it down.
Yeah, and you suggested that we write down sailing school and a sailboat.
Yeah, so that was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You suggested that we write down Mediterranean cruise, so we put that on the bucket list.
And you suggested that we go scuba diving in the ocean. And I wasn't so keen on that. And I said, baby, I'll do whatever it takes to make that dream happen for you. And I'm going to ask one of our son-in-laws to go with you.
So now I'm going on a date with one of the son-in-laws. Most of these things on our list, we got 54 of them. They're kind of crazy, and some we probably will never end up doing. But one of them was hike the Camino Trail in France and Spain.
And we wrote down, or you wanted, this 600-mile or 600-kilometer bike ride down the Oregon coast. That sounds crazy to me, but it's there. Or travel to an Asian country, which I haven't quite been on board with yet.
Yeah. So we got lots of them. Lots of them we have done. For instance, we have motorcycled through the Kelowna area on a vineyard tour. We've hiked the Tea House Challenge back behind Lake Louise. We recently went on an Alaskan cruise, which is awesome. And we wrote down part of the bucket list was to write a book. But the point of this is that you will never accidentally drift into closeness or passion. You have to design it. You have to design it.
Yeah, because passion, this fiery sensation that makes you feel alive with desire, happened automatically and even naturally when you were dating, before you were married, but after you're married, and especially after like you're 7, 15, 25, 40 years.
Yeah.
It needs to be cultivated. It needs to be fanned into flame. It needs to be rekindled. And it helps to provide a bit of movement and a bit of momentum.
That's right. So many of you would have walked in thinking, oh, create adventure. That's like the once a year thing. No, that's a daily thing. That's a daily thing with the level 1 micro adventures, level 2 mini adventures weekly or monthly, level 3 milestone adventures every year, and then level 4 monumental adventures, which happen like once in a lifetime. Okay, so now it's time to take some time online. Dunstan and Jessica are going to join you in the locker room for a few minutes. Then you'll have time to just process some questions on your own. And around the tables right now, your table hosts are going to lead you based on this particular play about some discussion and how to apply this to your own lives. All right, pulling us back together from some great discussions about creating adventure. Before we wrap up with our last 2 greatest marriage plays, we'd like to take just a couple of minutes tonight to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing behind the scenes and why we're doing it. Over the last couple of years, actually, we've been working with this growing intensity and urgency. We keep meeting with couples, and we keep realizing that usually the stuff that they're working through didn't happen in one catastrophic moment, but it was really a matter of them just distancing themselves, drifting away quietly, and we said, hey, is there anything we can do to begin to maybe help couples before they hit the hard times?
Yeah, so along with our crew of adult kids, we started something called the Relationship Rocket, and it really is just simple, practical tools that help couples to reconnect and to help them move forward.
Yeah, so we'd just like to take a moment to invite you onto the journey and onto the mission. We're on this mission to help couples, and the best way that you could be part of this is not actually even to buy a book. There's a table in the foyer. If you want to buy a book, that's great. But there are other ways for you to help, and one of them actually has to do with the launch team.
Yeah, we're getting ready to launch 2 short books, the 7-Day Marriage Challenge and the 7-Day Marriage Detox.
And we actually just unboxed those today for the very first time. We've never seen them. We got a box today with both of these books in there, so they're really, really fresh.
Yeah, they're really more like devotionals. So they're very short and very practical and helping couples to not only read some scripture together and find out what God says about relationship, but also to ask good questions and to navigate through different parts of marriage. So we are building a launch team that will activate on May 1st.
Yeah, now a launch team kind of seems big and official. It's not. It's really actually very small, very simple. All it is a matter of getting a copy of the book, either a free ebook or one of the other paper book, reading one or both if you want. They're only 100 pages, so they're pretty small. And then here's the most important part, leaving an honest review. That's really huge.
You know, today's book runs, that there's so many books out there, they really go on star power and they go on the number of reviews. And depending on the number of reviews they have, that directs the algorithm to help couples who are looking for marriage resources.
Yeah, so the job of the launch team, if you did join the launch team, is simply to read the book, to leave a very honest review, and that's it. So it's super simple, and we'd love to invite you to join that.
Yeah, so if you'd like to, you can talk to us. You can sign up for it on our website.
There's a QR code on one of the little coasters. You can use the QR code there. You can come talk to us in the foyer. It starts May 1st, and then it within a month, it's kind of done. And it's just a way to get a book out there into the world to the people that need it. And we would love to invite you on that mission with us. So, all right, we've got a mission, and that is to finish the last 2 of the greatest plays.
So when I say the word hack, what do you think of?
Wow, I mean, there's lots of definitions for hack. Like, for instance, if your hairdresser did a really lousy job on your haircut, wow, are they ever a hack, right? I don't think I've ever said that, though, and I wouldn't.
He hasn't, honestly, he hasn't.
It looks beautiful, honey, it looks beautiful. Other words for hack, I mean, a digital invader that breaks into your computer, that's a hack, right? Somebody who has got a really bad cough, they have a hack. Or there, of course, is this definition of a clever shortcut or a smart fix.
Well, let's go with that one, the clever shortcut or the smart fix, and do it for conflicts in marriage. With greatest marriage play, number 2, settle it fast.
Yeah, the fact is that when we talk about passion, there's often a lot of passion that comes out in the context of conflict. So it can be fiery desire, appetites, cravings, or aches within a marriage. And now many of those issues, admittedly, are deep, they're painful, they're complex. We're not about to solve them in 15 minutes.
No, but we can give you 2 very simple ways to help lower the temperature and help you to navigate through some of the difficult and even mundane type conflicts that you might have, and just to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, the fact is that championship marriages are not marriages that have no conflict. That's not the definition of a championship marriage. They are marriages that learn to shorten the distance between the hurt and the healing.
And that's what these little conflict hacks are set out to do. Here's a typical trajectory that happens when a couple is in conflict. It turns to a fight, and it starts with often frustration. And the frustration leads to tension. And the tension, unresolved, becomes distance. And distance becomes coldness. And coldness becomes a narrative. And the narrative can be very dangerous.
Yeah, that's when a conflict becomes a narrative, it becomes really deadly, right? And so what a narrative is you begin telling a story to yourself, usually about your spouse. So it would be something like, you never listened. You're always so short. You never listen to me. You don't care. Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. Everything else seems to be more important to you than me, right? So those would be examples of how this turns into a narrative.
And then it escalates, and that escalation can happen in minutes, and before you know it, there's a wall between you and your spouse, and each of you becomes really entrenched with your own narrative. And then you start to throw verbal hand grenades over the wall, and it's very much, there's so much distance between you. You can't even really see each other anymore because of this wall that you've built up between you.
Yeah, now we know what we're talking about because this has literally happened to us hundreds of times. We've had these moments of conflict between each other. What ends up happening is the differences get exaggerated and you say things that aren't even true, and the feelings you end up feeling like this wall that you're throwing these hand grenades over is impenetrable.
Mm-hmm. So we want to give you a 10-second hack that you can take with you to reveal that door in the wall that can open up a way for the 2 of you to get back on the same side together. And instead of battling the problem against each other, you are battling together. So if you're ready, we're going to write down 2 phrases. The first one is, my contribution to the problem is.
My contribution to the problem is. This is golden. This is brilliant. It lowers your defenses. It raises your self-awareness. It doesn't just open the door in the wall. It blows a hole in the wall, and it shifts the ground underneath you from blame to ownership of the problem.
And once again, we didn't make this up. This is something that Jesus taught. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 5, Jesus is teaching his most famous sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. And in that verse, it says, first, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Now, Jesus couldn't be more clear. He says, your first assignment in a conflict is not to inspect your spouse's failure with a magnifying glass, but first, inspect your own heart. And all you have to do to activate this is to admit in every conflict, you have something to own here. It might be 40%, it might be 30%, it might only be 5%, but you have something to own. And so it's so important that you do that before attacking your spouse.
That's right. My contribution to the problem is that I came in way too hot on that issue.
My contribution to the problem is I shut down and I stonewalled you.
My contribution to the problem is that I assumed from your perspective that what you were saying, I assumed the worst.
And my contribution to the problem is I got way too defensive and I didn't listen to anything you were saying.
My contribution to the problem is that I said some very hurtful, exaggerated words that in truth I don't really mean, but I said them.
Yeah. You know, the first few times you use this phrase, it might sound kind of stiff or rehearsed and unnatural, but you use it a few times and I can guarantee you it is going to change the way the conflict goes. It will begin to dismantle that wall that's between you more quickly, and there will be less damage between you.
Yeah. So the first phrase is my contribution to the problem is. The second phrase can feel shocking. You're right.
I am.
You're right.
No.
You were right. You were right. Here's the reality, is that in a conflict, it's so easy for that narrative to say that you are 100% wrong and I'm right. But to flip that around and for me to literally say to you, you're right. Because here's the logic of the whole thing. There's no way that in a fight situation that Carolyn could be 100% wrong. I have a contribution, I need to own that. You have a contribution, you need to own that. But in ascribing problems and ownership to this thing, I can't say you're 100% wrong. There's got to be something in there that's truthful. And so our job is, under the rubble of all this chaos, is to dig a little bit and say, okay, what is it? There's probably some truth in there somewhere. So what is that truth and can I name it?
Yeah. You know, you've probably had the same experience we've had where you have a verbal blowout between the two of you, and the frustration turns to tension, and then tension turns to distance, and the distance puts this big wall between the two of you, and you begin throwing those verbal hand grenades over the wall, and finally, 3 hours or maybe even 3 days later, you start to cool down, and you begin to see, oh, maybe they were right about something.
Yeah, in that moment, you probably end up, in that cooling down, you end up saying, you were right. Well, instead of waiting 3 days or 3 hours, we say, can we lessen the distance between the hurt and the healing? Can you lessen that? And one way to do that is, you were right. Mm-hmm. You're right, I could have managed those finances a lot better, and I went on a spending spree. You're right.
You're right, I was distracted.
You're right to feel hurt by that because I said something that was really hurtful.
You're right, I wasn't really listening to what you were saying.
Yeah, so this whole idea of taking ownership is a game changer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It sure is. You know, those two words are tiny, but they are dynamite. You're right. They blow up pride and posturing and this need to be right. In Proverbs 15, verse 1, it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. That gentle answer isn't just sweet and nice. It actually changes the direction of the moment. And next time you are in a conflict situation with your spouse, use this 10-second little hack, these two little phrases. My contribution to the problem is, and you're right.
Yeah, you'll shorten the distance between the hurt and the healing, which leads to this year's March Marriage Madness Top 10 Greatest Marriage Plays. Number 1, are you ready for it? Here it is. Fight for your spouse. Fight for your spouse. You know, there's a fascinating use of the word passion in relation to Jesus, especially this time of year. You've probably heard it. The passion of the Christ. Think about that for a second. That's curious. the passion of the Christ. It's not speaking about emotion or fiery emotion. What it's referring to is something completely different. You see, the word passion comes from a Latin word that actually means to suffer, to endure. So this phrase, the passion of the Christ, talking about Jesus being passionate, means the distance that Jesus would go, the price that Jesus would pay, and the willingness he would have to fight for us no matter the cost.
You know what? Something that we've lost in our modern day culture is we've forgotten how to fight for our spouse. We fight with them, we fight against them, we fight to be right, but we don't fight for them like we once did.
You know how I think in pictures? Well, as soon as you say that, fighting for your spouse the way we once did, I get a picture in my mind. And what I picture is I picture a medieval castle, a medieval scene with a castle and a kingdom that has seen better days, and a castle with a tower. Look at that tower. And in the top of that tower is a prison. And I picture my spouse, your spouse, in the prison. And for some of us, the tower has a name on it called fear. Fear of failing, fear of not being enough. For others, the tower has a name called shame. And we feel like I messed up, or I should be further along in life than I am now. For others, it's wounds from old hurts or past words. For others, it's uncertainty. That tower, that prison might be dissatisfaction with life. It might be work pressure. It might be unmet expectations. It might be even exhaustion. And from inside of that tower, I imagine my spouse and your spouse looking out the window, and they see us a long distance away, and they have one question. And so they whisper out of that tower window as they look at us a long distance away, and they say, "Will you fight for me? Will you fight for me? Here I am locked in this tower. Are you just going to stand off in a distance, watch me struggle? Are you going to complain about my weaknesses and my struggles? Maybe you'll even shoot a few arrows at me, or will you fight for me? Are you willing to go to battle with the dragons?" And I picture dragons in my scene. And of course, not literal dragons, but the dragons that keep us locked in our towers, in our prisons, the lies that we believe, the fears, the stress, the temptations that feel overwhelming, the skewed perspective, the pain, the patterns that we just can't seem to break out of.
You know, there are some days when my life pressures or insecurities or my worries begin to haunt me, and they keep me shackled up in that tower. And I often look out the window like you described, and I long for you to enter into my world and to say, "I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to take my sword and I'm going to kill some dragons for you." And you've gotten pretty good at being one of those dragon slayers.
I used to be horrible at slaying dragons.
Yeah, but you've gotten so good. Because you ask good questions. You listen to me go on and on and on about my stuff.
You do go on and on and on.
And you'll use your words like a sword to take on those enemies that are fighting me, and you choose to fight for me.
We often think in male-female terms, and maybe like the woman is in the tower and the guy is the knight in shining armor, but that's not our experience. I've been locked in that tower so many times, and you've become incredibly skilled at spotting and hunting. Those dragons don't stand a chance because you're a really good dragon killer. And Carolyn has killed a number of dragons for me and has certainly come after those. Now, let's just be super clear. Our spouse cannot be our savior. We only have one savior, and his name is Jesus. So our spouse isn't going to be our savior. You can't be expected to fix everything, to carry everything, to fight every single battle and win them for you. But what you can do is you can stand there. You can be strong. You can fight as much as you can with those dragons. You can support them, and you can say these words like, "You know what? I see you in the tower, I see the dragons around. I see how difficult this is, and I am not going to leave you there. I'm going to do everything I can. So the question is, are you fighting against your spouse, or are you fighting for your spouse?
And another question, how far would you go? How much would you sacrifice for your spouse, to speak life when they're defeated, to show up when they're struggling, to be patient when they're not at their best, to remind them, hey, you're not crazy. You're not alone in this, and you're not going to be stuck in that tower forever.
So in many ways, we've kind of come full circle, right? Because number 10 was choose your team. And that's kind of a mild version of this in a sense, but this is the one with teeth, right? This is the one that says, you know what, I'm going to be super aware of where my spouse is right now. And we've met so many couples who their spouse is locked in a tower of something, of some sort of, bondage or prison. And they get so frustrated and they're mad at them and they're shooting arrows at them rather than actually armoring up and saying, I'm going to go to battle for my spouse. I'm going to fight for my spouse.
You know, in any marriage, we already know the names of the first 3 dragons, and that we all need to look for and to slay. And that is selfishness, hiding and secrecy, and apathy, also known as laziness and indifference.
So you slay selfishness with being selfless.
And you cut the head off of the lies and the secrecy with the sword of being truthful.
And you put a sword through the heart of apathy and indifference by being passionate, not just fired up with emotion, but absolutely committed to intentionality and purpose so that you're creating adventures and to the willingness to sacrifice for your spouse.
And Jesus said it best in John chapter 15, verse 13, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's spouse.
That's a mandate. For us, being married 40 years, that's still a mandate that I need to lay down my life for you, and you constantly lay down your life for me. So in the room and at home, we're about to go to our Need and Need time, our post-game show, where this is 10 minutes set aside for you to process and talk about this. Just a quick reminder for those table leaders in the room, need your scorecards at the name tag table right now would be great. Otherwise, you've got 10 minutes to take some time, knee to knee, and have a discussion.